So, if you had to explain what Taoism is for people who are listening to it, because I always find it so fascinating. Now, was this particular Taoism was that developed is a Chinese-based system, right? Correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you just give us a little bit of background, what it kind of means, so somebody who's not familiar with it, maybe just give a little bit of maybe some of the philosophies of Taoism.
So that's a great question. And it's so funny because the very first line of like the most famous book in Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, says the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. So what it's saying is you can't explain Taoism. If
Okay.
you can, then it's not Taoism. It's like it takes a long time to wrap your mind around it. But what it's really saying is that it can only be lived. It can only be experienced.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. But there definitely are some concepts that when I went into it, one of my goals was to calm my mind. I used to be very anxious, after the loss of our kid and stuff. There was still this anxiety inside of me, and that's what I really wanted. So for me, the core of Taoism is a way to control the mind, to let go
Okay.
of all these things that we carry that hold us down, that hold us back. When people come into the energy clinic, I just see them now. I see them differently. I see that they're so tight. They're just holding on to everything. And if you can just let go. One example is there's a concept called Wu Wei, which means effortless action or non-action. Like, how does the grass grow? Right? The grass grows effortlessly. It just grows. And so what I take from that is that we all have a flow. We have a flow in our life. And that if we'll allow ourselves to just jump into that stream and flow, then life is effortless. Right? And I'm sure you've been in moments like that, maybe a creative moment or something where everything just time stands still, nothing else matters. I mean, that's the Tao. That's the flow. If you see an athlete who takes a shot and starts walking back before it even hits the rim because they know that it's going in, that's the Tao. I mean, they talk about like effortless action. They say governments should lead by not leading, right? They shouldn't inject themselves into. So I wonder often, what they would think of, all the mandates and stuff
Yeah.
these days. I'm sure they wouldn't be greatly for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. Now I've heard of that expression of being in the flow and stuff like that. One of the things I was always curious about is how you translate that into your clients. They take that philosophy and that understanding, because as an energy healer, as somebody who's an acupuncturist and stuff like that, and when you see people coming in, they're usually coming in for chronic stress. And there's a lot of different things to come in for, but it's probably a lot of it's just stress related stuff that the body just is saying, hey, I need to get this fixed or get this looked at, I should say. And how has that really changed? I know you talked about now you just kind of see them and you see what's actually happening. You can kind of pull yourself back from seeing their anxiety and stuff like that, and just teach them how to do that. So how does that work for you?
Well, I guess one of the things that's really changed for me in the clinic is, I still, love and give with all my heart, but I'm not afraid to call people on their self-deception. I'm not afraid to talk to people straight and tell them that, because I'll ask the question, what are you afraid of? Because fear is the background of almost everything, right?
Yeah.
But fear keeps disguising itself. It will disguise itself as anger. If someone comes in and they're really angry, the core is probably that they're very afraid. And so I'll say, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm not afraid of anything. And so now I don't have a problem with calling them on that, right? So that's really one of the things, is I'm able to drill down much deeper. And this is as a result of my Shifu drilling into me. And I'll give you an example.
Please.
When we're ordained, we get some scriptures that we're to read each day. And I'm going to say that some people think of Taoism as a religion, some people think of it as a philosophy. I just think of it as is. It's just a frame of mind. So the scriptures aren't particularly religious, they're just wisdom, but they're written in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense because they're translated from old Chinese and the terms and stuff they use. So one day I'm talking to my Shifu, I say, Shifu, is it okay with you if each week we review a little bit of the scriptures and I tell you what I think it's saying? I'm going to try to decipher it. And he says, no. I go, oh, okay. And he says, I would do that for any other student, but not for you. I go, oh, really? He goes, yes. Because when you get anxious, you start to go down. You go down in this downward cycle and you cycle out of control. He said, my challenge for you is I want you to just read them. And I don't want you to analyze them. I want you to just read them. They are transformative of themselves. And so at first I was like, oh, what the heck? I've been working on myself for all these years and you're telling me I'm still spiraling down. Oh my God. But then it made sense. And it's times like that where you have a transformation, where you have a revelation. And when I work with my clients, that's when they get the most out of it, right? When you're not afraid to reflect that mirror back at them and point deep inside and try to find that root. Instead of just plucking off the flower, the dandelion top, you have to find out what the root is.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's always a root cause. There's always an underlying thing to the anxiety, like you said, the fear, and there's always something there. It's a low self-worth. There's a lot of different things, like it's all shame, all these different emotions and things that either you've learned over through a disruptive childhood or a few different things, and just life in general, just throwing you curveballs after curveball, and you just associate life in general as just being crazy. And it's amazing how, if you can just kind of pull yourself back, but also just allow and listen to what's being said, because sometimes we're always in that denial state. It's like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything. What are you talking about? Well, I'm not afraid of anything, Meanwhile, in the back of our head, it's kind of like we're saying, yeah, it's a little bit of bullshit. We kind of know it's a little bullshit, but until we get called out on our bullshit. And it's amazing because, it's always like the ego gets in the way. It's like, what is this guy talking about?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to discuss too, as well, just not only the concepts or the philosophies of Taoism, but I know you started this new program, which seems to be really taking off. And it's about becoming this peaceful mind warrior. I always thought it was fascinating because I know it really has to do with a lot of the mental aspect of it too. But in a way, it reminded me when I saw your caricature, and it reminded me of the warrior code of the Bushido. Mm-hmm. And it was very much that kind of stimulating thought process in my mind. And from my understanding, and again, I'm not a historian or anything like this. I'm not an advocate of all these different things, of understanding all these different philosophies. I mean, I learned a little bit. Most of it, I'm a student just listening to my guest here, but it just sounded like there's that code where it's like that warrior's code that, it's about discipline, honor, respect, those kind of underlying fundamental things about, and then adding the Taoism, because I think a lot of the Bushido code probably came from Taoism in some ways and just kind of married the two together. What is your idea about that?
Yeah, everything is connected. And I'm a 22nd generation Dragon Gate priest. So in Taoism itself, there's many different schools, but one of the founders of our school said that if you look at like Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, like what's the difference? The end result is all to try to be sort of the clearest being that you can be. So I did study the Bushido code, earlier when I was writing one of my books, and I do believe in honor and integrity and being, cultivating yourself. That's what the Japanese called, like cultivating yourself, clearing your energy. And they said that a Taoist would have to be both a poet and a warrior, right? You cannot be one without the other. So that's sort of where it comes from. And I believe that we all have this inner warrior. And when you can calm your mind, like we live from the discursive mind right here, the monkey mind. And it's always yattering at us. It's always telling us you're not good enough. You can't do this. You should be jealous. You should be envious. They're out to get you. And it gives what is called an agitated mind.